Hello, and this is Nick Kennedy, your gray man. Just about in the middle of a nice Martin Luther King long weekend, which is always nice. Temperature's a little cold out here for the Atlanta area. I guess the whole country's getting a cold hit right now, so I shouldn't complain. I think we're only like maybe in the low 40s. And I understand it's a lot of snow in the Northeast and cold air there. So I'm glad I'm not there anymore. Anyway, so today I decided that I was going to review Dune Part 1. And the reason is I think in March it's slated for the second part of that to come out. Now, for the longest time, and I've got to admit this, I've been avoiding this movie. And there's a few reasons for that. And the first one is that in 1984, the first movie came out. Now, I was working thereabouts in movies around that time, and they didn't have the internet back then. So, we just basically read publications as they came out at the theaters, et cetera. And so I'm relying on this information being mostly reliable. But, again, the 80s, we couldn't really look it up on the internet, but it makes sense to me. The original movie was kind of a mess. It was running around, with different directors. It was a very complicated movie to make. And I guess, they'd bring on some directors, they'd look at it and just go, yeah, no, thanks anyway. And then there was a director, one of my favorites of all time, by the way, David Lynch. And he had his eye on a script called Blue Velvet that he wanted to create and work on. And he had a young protege. He was eyeing for the role in Blue Velvet, Kyle MacLachlan. And I guess the studio said to him, well, we'll give you Blue Velvet if you will take this, mess off our hands. So David Lynch figured, I'll use this as kind of a workshop to get my young protege some experience. And again, this is basically stuff I read from magazines many, many years ago. I'm assuming it's mostly true. Anyway, he took over the reins of the original Dune, and his heart really wasn't in it because he was really doing it to get to Blue Velvet. Anyway, the movie finally got made and had all kind of budgetary problems. And, it was one of those things like they kind of knew before it got out that it wasn't going to go far, kind of like how Marvel is now. So anyway, it was released under a name. The director was named Alan Smithy. Back then, when directors put out a movie or a work and they didn't really have a lot of faith or confidence in it, they would slap on the name Alan Smithy as kind of a way of saying, I disown this movie. Now, a lot of movies back then had that. They don't do that anymore. They don't even allow it. For some reason, there actually was a movie that came out a while back about that, a comedy, I think. I forget the name of it. It was it mentioned the name Alan Smithy, and the whole thing was, people making movies that they weren't particularly proud of. Anyway, he went on to make Blue Velvet, by the way, which is one of my favorite all-time movies. And Kyle MacLachlan's been a pretty good actor. So I guess it had a good ending. The bad part, of course, is that Dune was never really truly made the way it was supposed to. About 22 years ago, I decided that I was going to sit down and read the Dune books. And there's quite a few out there. And I guess when the author, Frank Herbert, I think, died, his son took over and continued making them. I don't remember how many books I read. I read an awful lot. So, I'm somewhat familiar with the story, but being 22 years ago, the exact details of the book escaped me. I just remember the main details, the main parts. Well, anyway, getting back to that. So for that reason and a few other reasons, I was kind of hesitant to watch Dune. But I figured, if I'm going to be doing these podcasts, I should sit down and watch it. So last night I sat down and I watched the movie. And I got to tell you, I really enjoyed it. I really did. I have to say that right off the bat. We'll get into more details, but this was a very pleasant surprise. It was directed by, and I know I'm going to butcher this last name, and I apologize, Denis Villeneuve. Villeneuve. He was born in Ontario, Quebec, close to where I was born, actually. Um, Only I think a few years later after me. Anyway, and he did an outstanding job. He's been known for a few movies. I guess among the biggest, with The Arrival that came out a few years ago with Amy Adams. Didn't like the movie myself. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Going off on a quick tangent here about The Arrival, it had aliens that supposedly were of superior intellect that came down and wanted to meet us. But Amy Adams played a scientist, if I remember correctly, and she had to come up with a way to communicate with these, these beings that were so much more far advanced than we were. I think they spoke through pictures or something. And to me, that just didn't make any sense. I mean, if you're an intelligent life form and you're going to go talk to somebody or something that is way behind you, wouldn't you kind of want a way to communicate? I mean, I couldn't imagine going to a hell of ants and figure, okay, guys, I'm here, and I figure out a way to talk to me, and I'll just stand here. I mean, you would think you'd have that all figured out before you go visit them. You wouldn't go just sit down with a lower life form and say, okay, I'm here, figure it out yourselves. I never really got beyond that. Although I love Amy Adams, I could watch her just about anything. He also did a great movie, Sicario. Outstanding. I enjoyed that tremendously. I also watched, I don't think he did Sicario 2, but that was also decent, but not as good as the original one. Emily Blunt was in that movie, and Josh Brolin, who's also in this. Really enjoyed that. So he also did Prisoners with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, another great movie that not many people know about. I would highly recommend, if you are looking for a movie, that you look that one up. And also a very understated movie, Blade Runner 2049, with Ryan Gosling, came out a few years ago, and he did that as well. So this is a guy that's got some credibility. He really does. So this is no exception. I did like this. To go through it now, it stars Timothy Chalamet. I believe that's what you say his name. I was a little reserved about jumping on board with him. I think he can act. It's not a matter of that. It's just a matter of the role. This is supposed to be, somebody that, he's kind of a nobody, and he ends up becoming, almost like a cult hero, taking on with the sandworms and all that kind of stuff. So it's like he starts off, a kind of weakish boy, and he ends up being the promised the promised hero of the planet, the galaxies, whatever. To me, he just looks like you want to feed the kid. He looks like he's 90 pounds. So I was wondering, about that, and I still do. I will say this: at the beginning, he's supposed to be a kind of a frail kid, and that certainly works. And maybe he's going to just hit the weight room, and maybe he can bulk up. I mean, people have done it before. Maybe he's going to just come out looking like Thor or Captain America for the next movie. I don't know. But yeah, for this first one, he's actually fine. I think his acting is very, very good. He's a likable guy. I think he did an outstanding job. It's just that, again, his physical presence that I'm wondering in the next movie, when he rises up to become the promised hero of the sand, or, sandworms, etc., if he's really going to look the part. Oscar Isaac, I got to tell you, he's not on my favorite list, mostly because of the fact that anyone who does the latest trilogy of Star Wars has got 2 marks against them. But Adam Driver has won me over. I forgive him for those movies, and actually, I enjoy watching Adam Driver in his movies now. So I can change my mind. I mean, I'm open to that, and I'm giving Oscar Isaac a chance. I do think somehow he seems to be. There are some actors that are kind of force fed us a little bit. Pedro Pascal, I think, is the same way. They try to put him in everything. So I got to be a little bit careful that I prefer actors who maybe weren't overexposed. That's one of the reasons why Pedro Pascal. I'll never forgive him for Wonder Woman in 1984. But even beyond that, he's just seems. I swear, I expect to turn on the TV and watch him in a Charmin commercial. But anyway, but Oscar Isaac, no, he's done some good stuff. He did a small part in Annihilation, which I didn't love, but it was okay. Ex Machina, I think he did an outstanding job. And so yeah, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's slowly winning me over, but those Star Wars movies, boy, they did it to me. I'm not really I'm not a big fan of many people from those movies. Zendaya, but very beautiful young woman, doesn't have a big part in this yet. I think that the second part's going to come out, and she's probably going to be given a chance to shine then. But I find her to be very likable. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. But if you're a big Zendaya fan, and you think that she's going to own part one of Dune, unfortunately, no. I think she's got a couple of lines at most in this. You see her smiling, very beautiful girl, beautiful woman, but not a huge part in this part of the movie. Rebecca Ferguson, I was very impressed with her performance. I think she was much better than the 1984 version with Virginia Madsen. But yeah, no, I thought Rebecca Ferguson did a fine job, and she's someone to watch. She's going to be probably coming out with more movies. Jason Momoa, I remember him in the last season or so of Baywatch. Very young, if you probably wouldn't remember him unless you go back and watch Baywatch. But he was a kid then. I got to tell you, at first, when you start following his career back in the day, at first he just comes off as like a big musclehead, like almost a modern day Arnold Schwarzenegger. But something, I gotta tell you, I think he is really getting some acting chops. I remember him he was in Stargate Atlantis, I think, and they brought him in the second season because the show was missing something, and he did actually deliver. He's not just a big, brawny, handsome guy for the women. He comes across as somebody that if he was hanging around, I'd want to go and have a beer with him. He looks like he's just a good guy, good time. He's a very likable person, and I think he's actually developing into being quite the actor. I don't expect him to battle Leonardo DiCaprio for any parts or anything like that. But if you're looking for a good supporting role, I think he's very solid. And like I said, he's actually a very likable kind of guy. Dolph Lundgren. He might be a great guy, but he just doesn't look like somebody who you could have a beer with, And Jason Momoa, I think, just looks like a friendly guy. I don't know much about the guy. I'm just telling you the image he's when you watch him on the screen, he's highly likable. And I'm surprised. I didn't think he was going to have much of a career, but I think he's very solid. Also, Stellan Skarsgård. I hope I got that name right. He's been in a ton of things, a lot of the Avengers movies. Goes back to Good Will Hunting. He was in that. I think he was in a movie with Diane Lane back in the early 2000s, like The Glass House. And I think he was. I'm trying to think who else was in that movie. Well, drawing a blank, but it was an okay movie. I saw it at the theater. Anyway, I know there was a young girl in that movie too, and I just can't. She doesn't act anymore, and her name's avoiding. Might come later on. I don't know. But she looks like Helen Hunt a little bit, a very young Helen Hunt. Anyway, getting back to that, he was also in Mamma Mia. If you like that kind of thing. Josh Brolin, of course, he was also in Sicario. Plays a very tough man generally. He was Thanos, of course, lest we forget. Uh, he was in Jonah Hex, which a lot of people wish they could forget. No Country for Old Men. Uh, and let's see, what else? Oh, also we have Javier Bardem, who's lucky enough to be married to Penelope Cruz. He was also in No Country for Old Men, a movie called Mother with Jennifer Lawrence that I'm not sure I could recommend it. I enjoyed it because it was so strange. And, there's been a lot of talk about what the movie was actually about. Jennifer Lawrence didn't actually even know when they asked her on a talk show. Which she didn't said she didn't understand any of the movie. But yeah, I mean, if you're kind of guy like me that wants to just watch a movie and doesn't mind having the rack their brains afterwards, figuring out what the hell did I just see, then go see Mother. Otherwise, you might want to miss it. Skyfall he was also in that as well. Another guy, David Bautista, Guardians of the Galaxy, played Drax. He'd been doing a few things too. I think he was in Blade Runner 2049 also at the beginning there. Charlotte Rampling, for those old timers, she was like me. She was in The Verdict with Paul Newman back around, I want to say like 1981 or so. She was also in a movie, Swimming Pool, which came out around 2003. If you don't recognize the movies or her name, you probably recognize her. She's been in a lot of things. Now, one of the things that confused me about the movie is there was a character, and I know I'm going to mess his name up, and I apologize. He was Nigerian, and I'm always going to say nice things about Nigerians because Nigerians and African people in general have always been good friends of mine. I'm actually married to a Nigerian woman. So yeah, but doesn't mean I can pronounce their names. I'm going to do the best I can with this. Babs, that's the easy part. Alusan Moken. Now, if my wife was here, she'd probably die of embarrassment I pronounced his name that way, but that's how it looks like to me. Olasam Moken. Anyway, I looked it up, he's like third-degree jiu-jitsu master, and he shows it in this movie. I was kind of hoping that they would make more of his role. He is, and there might be a very small, tiny spoiler here, but I think everyone pretty much assumes that Timothée Chalamet is going to be in part 2, and he can't die in the first half of part 1. So yeah, there was a duel between the two of them to the death, and I thought it was be one of those things where I forget his name. I think it was like Jamis or something like that in the movie. It was played by Babs, and I'm not trying to say last name again. And they did a duel to the death, and I was kind of hoping that Babs, with a challenging, this young kid, would end up mentoring him, and they would end up with those, the old story about how two people are bump their heads at the beginning, and then there's a mutual respect, and they grow into a friendship, and maybe down the road, the one that was inexperienced and young would turn around saving the guy. But it doesn't end up that way, which is a little bit disappointing to me. I thought they could have done more with that role. But anyway, and he's also in Strange New Worlds. I've never really seen that, but he's actually in there. So anyway, those are the people that basically are in the movie. And just really quickly, the movie was long, but it ran, in my opinion, like a short movie. I really enjoyed it a lot. Cinematography was outstanding. The one thing that I enjoyed about it was, and I've not really seen the 1984 version of this movie in many, many years. I'm not inclined to watch it again. Because I've got better things to do for 3 hours of my life than watch that. But one thing was very much over the top. They had Sting play the bad guy. And I remember the time Sting was very popular. And it seemed like it was just too large. Things were just over the top. And this is a very understated movie, and I think Dune has to play that way. I don't think it's one of those movies that you need a lot of explosions and star fights and all that kind of stuff. It needs to be understated. I think the story is very long and involved, and you got to pace yourself, and it does that very very well. Um, and I think the '84 version was too much. The fight scenes, by the way, were really top notch, especially the ones with Jason Momoa. I don't know how much Timothy Chalamet did. I would tend to think they probably got more stunt doubles for him, but it still played really well. The very fact that I don't really know how much he did shows that it was pretty seamless as far as that they did use stunt. So overall, I thought that the action fight scenes weren't too many of them. They didn't rely heavily on them. This wasn't a John Woo movie or anything where everything's blowing up every few seconds. It was necessary. There was necessary fighting, necessary explosions, nothing uncalled for, nothing again over the top. The plot here is at least as important as the action, and that's rare. I think for these kind of movies, especially the science fiction one. A couple other things. The worms I thought looked really very very credible. It's very hard, I think, to come up with something like that, to say, okay, we're going to have these giant sandworms and not make it look hokey. It's a tough sell, I think. Honestly, I do. Um, I don't think that they telegraphed the plot too much. I know it's got another movie coming out, part two, but I read the books, and I still, again, I read the books 22 years ago, but I still found that I was had a lot of questions as to where it was going to go. I know basically where it's going to go, but I didn't remember, for example, that whole role with Janice, the Nigerian jiu-jitsu champ. I don't recall whether he was in the book or not. I don't know if he was. I may try to dig that up later on. I don't really think it really matters. I enjoyed it whether it was or it wasn't. Um, but yeah, no, I think overall though, it was done pretty well. They didn't let the cat out of the bag too much. There's still a lot of mysteries going on. Um, and even me knowing how more or less it's going to end up, I still really enjoyed it. So that's pretty much it. If I was going to give it a grade, trying to find a way of like measuring these. Like, I guess if I'm going to use the IMDb with the scale of 1 to 10, I would give this. I'd give it an 8.5. I would give it an 8.5, and yeah, I think an 8.5. I mean, I think it would be pretty hard to get more than that without really really wowing me. But I will say that again, for a few reasons, I had very low expectations. I dreaded seeing this movie, and it was one of the few movies that I can honestly say I really enjoyed this past year. I know it's 2021, but I just watched it last night. So anyway, that's how it goes. I will be obviously watching part two. I'll probably go to the theater to see that one because I'm completely sold on this. I do wish Jason Momoa was going to be in part two, but I don't see his name in there. So maybe he's not. So maybe he's going to be snuck in later on. Who knows? But anyway, 8.5. Great movie. If you got nothing to do, I think it's on. I think it's on Netflix. I think it's where I caught it. But anyway, so there you have. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. And hey, thanks for joining. And I hope it was good for you too. Take it easy now. Bye.